Yeah, welcome all to the MOOCs, the second MOOCs live session for this course, Environment and Development. The past few weeks, we have engaged and deliberate upon some themes which I would like to revisit, briefly summarize them. And meanwhile, I expect the learners to log in and then uh, post their questions if there is any. I'll be happy to respond them. So meanwhile, what I do is to briefly touch upon the themes which we have covered so far in the last few weeks. So we begin looking at the notions of how religion and environment has been interrelated, basing on where uh, why religion has played a pivotal role all throughout the successive stages of humankind. Now, religion and ecology for quite some time. If you look at the different religious traditions, there's a distinction between human and nature, which was hardly there is any distinction being created between the two. And on top of that, we could see that some of the indigenous communities, for most part, tends to see were perceived as the natural world as people by beings with whom it was necessary to cultivate a mutually respectful relationship with nature. However, with the advent of modernity, or perhaps much earlier, many of these indigenous traditions were marginalized by the modern state. Now, some of the questions which we would like to ponder upon in this theme is that how has environmental crisis challenged and transformed modern theology and then spiritual practice, and what have the world's faith believed about the human relations to nature. So in keeping in mind these questions, we deliberate upon some of the important religions, particularly Christianity, Buddhism, Hinduism, and we try to contextualize, understanding about the historical roots of our ecological crisis by engaging upon the works of Lynn White Jr., where Western traditions of technology and science has been very much debated, and the notions of medieval perceptions of man and nature, and how man's relations to the soil has profoundly changed over the successive period of time. Now, humanity is predominantly, perceived as the exploiter of nature, and man and nature are, perceived to be two things. That is, man is perceived to be the master, and then whereas they have that overriding power in terms of dominating and exploiting nature. So one very important question which comes to our mind is that what people do about their ecology depends on what they think about themselves in relation to things around them. So we have also delved upon the stories of creation and how science and technology are perceived to be, a blessed words in the contemporary vocabulary. So therefore, there is ample assumption that how science and technology have grown out of the Christian attitude towards man's relations to nature. And to that extent, Lynn White Jr. has explained thoroughly about the Christian worldview, how they tends to perceive man-nature relationship. And we move on to looking at biodiversity conservation ethics, particularly with regards to the teachings of Buddhism. Buddhism, for that matter, views humanity as an integral part of nature, so that when nature is defiled, it does pose a negative consequences on humankind. So therefore, when we abuse nature, we also abuse ourselves. So these are some of the precepts which we can perhaps contextualize and then see from many of the Buddhist texts of where nature conservation has been highly reflected. Now, we could also see that some of the monks were very much, closely living with nature, and then the first precept in Buddhism is non-violence. That is, one should not engage in harming or even killing anybody for that sense. So it also talks about the nature of water conservations, where nature should not be defiled, and so on and so forth. And we move on to Hinduism and nature conservations, where some of the important texts like Ayurveda talks about the notions of where the divine nature of many of the non-human species. So we then move on to looking at the notions of this natural resource management. What are the types of natural resources, and what are the necessities of conserving natural resources? And we have also touched upon the methods which involve in conserving forest, and then why wildlife to that extent is important, and the conservations of biodiversity in that sense. So we have also looked into why we should conserve natural resources. So some of the important characteristic, or rather the features of the process of this increasing growth rate of populations, industrializations, and urbanizations, there is an increasing demand for natural resources, and their availability, as we all know, is limited. So therefore, there is an urgent need or an increasing reliance for a proper management of these natural resources. So some of the important points which we can talk about is that how does one use natural resources in a judicious way? So therefore, the exploitations of natural resources should not be benefiting a few individuals, but it should be distributed equally forward. So therefore, many of the environmentalists to a large extent talks about environmental justice or the equitable distributions of resources. Now, we have also deliberate upon the community-based conservation, that is the community-based natural resource management, how the community themselves can in some way be an important stakeholders in terms of managing the resources. So this community-based natural resource management approach particularly combines conservation objectives with the generations of economic benefits for people who are living close to nature. Or in other words, we can say the community-based natural resource management refers to the collective use and management of natural resources in the rural areas by a group of people with self-defined distinct identity. Or in short, we can see how the commons are, being managed or conserved by these people. So we also deliberate upon the notions of the common property versus the private property, particularly by looking at the works of Gerrit Herdin and Eleanor Ostrom, that is governing the commons. So this debate has been, centrifugal in the domain of the natural resource management. People also, engage upon looking at the common property theory and others, because the forest has been and continue to be central to human survival, livelihoods, and prosperity. So the study of forest as commons has been one of the central sources of stimulus to the development of scholarship on common property. So therefore, there are extensive case studies where indigenous peoples and forests, their relationship and then the ownership rights in relations to forest are broadly distributed in different parts of the world. So we also have, different institutional arrangements where rules should be locally created and enforced. And next on, we move on to a theme called conservation-induced displacement, where the idea of this nature conservation and the idea of wilderness were the main principles of this. So we have this phenomenon of displacement globally, where there is a voluntary and involuntary forms of people moving from one place to another because of certain development or infrastructure development activities, or even the building of dams, mining, and all this in some way has been a part of the development activities. So therefore, when we talk about any forms of development, these notions of displacements comes into the forefront. So there are also many cases of the conservation-induced displacement, where case studies which I particularly highlight in this particular course, that is the case of the one Guzers and the Sariska tiger reserves, where the rights of these forest dwellers are being curtailed as a consequence of the setting up of these conservation, particularly the tiger reserve areas, because many of deprive these communities who are or which I broadly call as the ecosystem people, for their deprive them of their necessity for their survival and development. So the conservation of natural resources is thus closely linked to the sustainable development of the native populations in developing countries and the conservations on their way of life. So the Sariska Tiger Reserve in Rajasthan is one of the classic case of conservation based displacement. Now we also have look into the various nuances of how the issues of displacement affected the people's right of access and use. And I've also deliberated upon some of the environmental impact assessment and national rehabilitation and resettlement policies. So I've highlighted some of the important points, which I'm not going to revisit again. So we have also moved on to some of the issues, particularly with regards to the issues of mining development vis-a-vis the indigenous people. So mining induced displacement is also other variant when we talk about development vis-a-vis its impact on the marginalized communities. Because over the last few decades, there is an extensive mining development, and we could also see the nexus of the state and the corporates by sidelining the interests of those local stakeholders. So mining-induced displacement and resettlement is primarily an economic issue, which are associated with the loss or the significant reduction of access to basic resources. So in order to understand the impact of mining, we take the cases of mining in the state, particularly in Jharkhand and also in Orissa, where I extensively studied the cases of mining the Niamgiri Hills, where the Vedanta company has took over by mining the bauxite deposits from the Niamgiri Hills, which is culturally and religiously significant to the Dongria const. So the biodiversity of Niamgiri Hills, to that extent, have provided the details of the flora and fauna of that particular hills, and there has been a concerted resistance from the local communities, and there has been an anti-mining struggle where they resonate the slogans such as development for us is being able to protect our hills, rivers, and jungle. And then they also, come out very strongly with the slogans like let our blood flow like a river, but we won't allow mining. So therefore, the Niamgiri case is also one of the most infamous industrial projects plagued by land-related conflicts, and the resistance of the Adivasis in the state has been ongoing for the past few decades. When any forms of the successive governments come up with certain kinds of memorandum of understanding with certain corporate companies. So the anti-mining agitations, to a large extent, can be an eye-opener in terms of the way in which the marginalized sections of the peoples come together at the forefront and resist the development activities. So I've also discussed some of the case studies with regards to dam building, popularly in Northeast India, where I took a few case studies, particularly in the proposed Tipai Dam, and where it is not just simply about the building of dam as such, but where the proposed site is socially and culturally significant to the Mar community. So therefore, there is an objection voiced against the Tipai Dam for simply the reason that there's no prior informed consent, and also they questioned the notions of national development. I've also deliberated on the case study of Mapithil Dam, where there is a controversy and resistance to dam project, and wherein I also, bring in the politics of land acquisitions and the idea of this, where a forceful acquisitions of land or development is being backed by the whole notions of militarizations. And then we also look into the competing visions of development along the Narmada issue, which have been going on for a while now, and where people are, deploying the Gandhian way of resisting. So there seems to be no much questions. So this is it, and we have significantly covered in the last few weeks. And if you have any doubts, so you can also write directly to me. And I look forward to meeting you all when we have the final live session sometime in a few weeks' time. So thank you all for listening, and please continue to engage with the weekly assignment on a regular basis, as that is also a part of the assessment. Thank you all.